You've probably never seen a 3x3x2 that can turn like this. It looks crazy after only a few moves. What's it going to look like fully scrambled? And how hard is it going to be to solve? Stay tuned, because later in this video I'll be doing a full scramble and solve of this extra split 3x3x2. Some of the solve was surprisingly really difficult. But first, I need to start checking the forecast before going out to film these clips. Anyway, now that I'm no longer soaked, where did this come from? Actually, from France. This mod is the work of the prolific and very talented puzzle designer Grégoire Pfennig. I saw that he was selling off some of his collection on the Twisty Puzzles forum, and decided that I wanted to buy a few of the puzzles. Several days later, I got the box in the mail. I like this custom tape with his logo printed on it. That's a cool touch. The first puzzle I bought is this mental flop. It looks like a floppy cube, but is actually a 2x2x3 shape mod. I previously designed a hybrid between this and a floppy cube, which was the Mental Flop Extreme. I bought the mental flop just as a display piece for my collection. I think the gold pieces and black stickers give it a cool aesthetic. Up next are these two seed puzzles, which aren't Greg's designs. The small one is just called the Seed and was designed by Jonathan, while the bigger one is the Evil Seed and designed by Vladi. These are both cheese shape mods, and what's really cool is they only have 3 sides. I'm not sure if I'll be making a video about these seeds. Would you want to see that? You probably recognize these, at least if you watched my last video. The timing is crazy. I saw Greg's sale just a few hours after posting that video. I decided to buy 2 more mini Pura Twists because I can make a nice looking display if I have 3 of them. They're not for solving because the pentahedron is geometrically identical and turns much better than these. And finally, the star of the show, the extra split 3x3x2. This is the puzzle I'm by far the most excited for, because it's unlike anything I've ever solved before. So how does it work? Well, this is a fully functional 3x3x2, so it can make all of the usual moves. The special feature is that you can turn the side layers in 60-degree increments, and can then still turn the top layer. It looks like the puzzle gets bandaged pretty easily if you shapeshift it with single U-turns, so I'll probably want to use U2 turns to unlock more moves. When it's close to the solved state, the extra split 3x3x2 turns pretty well. It's a little choppy because there's a lot of pieces involved, but it's fine. Unfortunately, after you shapeshift it a bit more, the slice gets really catchy. You can see that as I turn it, the parts move side to side unnaturally, creating large gaps in between them. In his original video, Greg did notice this and suggested it could be fixed by cutting down the mechanism of these outer corners, the idea being that they're interfering with other parts in certain positions. If you look really closely inside, you can actually see exactly where this corner's mechanism is sticking up past where it should. Well, that's the cause of the lockups right there. Why would Greg make such a simple mistake? Well, there's actually a story related to that I'll talk about later, but first, I want to try fixing this because I think I'll be solving this puzzle a lot. So let's take apart the extra split 3x3x2 and take a look at its mechanism. I've put the extra split 3x3x2 into the exact position it was getting stuck in prior to the modifications, and now it's turning really smoothly with no lockups at all. While this is the first time I've had to sand an SLS puzzle, at least it was a success. If you're wondering why the exposed sections turned white, it's because SLS puzzles are typically printed white and then dyed black. The dye just doesn't penetrate beyond the part surface. I did use a black marker to color in any white splotches on the puzzle's external faces. I am noticing that the outer corners that I modified seem to potentially be a bit looser and have more room to move around. I'm honestly not 100% certain that it's gotten significantly worse, but it is plausible that cutting down the mechanism this way gave these corners more wiggle room internally. Even if that's the case, I think it's a worthwhile trade-off for the puzzle not locking up constantly. It still doesn't feel like it's going to pop or anything, it's just something I noticed. So why would Greg make such a simple mistake in the design? The process of this puzzle's creation was surprisingly tumultuous. If you were a viewer of Greg's channel during this time, you'll remember that he tried making some puzzles in FDM, which didn't go incredibly well for him. First he tried printing parts without changing their orientations, and then he got frustrated by inconsistent tolerances. I do feel the tolerance issue. I had a cool 5x5 mod years ago which didn't work because that printer's tolerances were way off. Greg's final FDM puzzle was actually a prototype of the extra split 3x3x2, and when it failed, he was so focused on the FDM versus SLS debate that the corner's design flaw just went unnoticed. If you watch his video about the SLS version, which is the one that I bought, in the entire video he cannot stop complaining about FDM, which I find a bit tiring. This isn't a particularly difficult print, and you can see Justin Costa made a perfectly functional FDM version after Greg shared his troubles. From my perspective, FDM and SLS are suited for folks with significantly different priorities. Although in recent years I've seen more and more puzzle designers switching from SLS to FDM. Even Matt Bonner's 34x34 is an FDM puzzle, printed in PLA. I don't want to dwell on this too long though, because it's kind of just bringing up old troubles. Greg hasn't even made puzzles in years at this point. In any case, the extra split 3x3x2 is now ready for me to scramble it properly. Before I do so, I want to analyze the puzzle and hypothesize what the solve will be like. So let's see, the 3x3x2 edges are divided evenly into 60-degree segments, so each 2x3 face is essentially a layer of a 6-segment cheese. However, the external bandaging from the 3x3x2 corners is quite extensive, so I think cheese algorithms will often be blocked until I get the puzzle back into the correct shape. Likewise, my strategy is probably going to be to solve the cuboid shape first, and then reduce it to a 3x3x2 using cheese algorithms, and then finally I could just solve it like a 3x3x2. I'm not sure what to expect in terms of difficulty, but I think solving the shape might be the hardest step. Alright, let's finally scramble the extra split 3x3x2 right after this B-roll. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're interested in unique puzzles like this one. If you just watched the B-roll, I did scramble the extra split 3x3x2, but I realized it wasn't a full scramble. The quality of the scramble heavily depends on how much the puzzle scrambled before becoming heavily bandaged, so let's try and scramble it a little bit better right now. I just scrambled it like a 3x3x2, and now I'm going to scramble it using the extra cuts, but without shapeshifting the puzzle. Now that the colors are mixed around more, I'm going to start shapeshifting. I noticed that most of the time only one or two side faces will be able to turn, making it actually challenging to find turns to make. Of course, the slice turn is always available. The extra split 3x3x2 is finally scrambled, and not only does it look insane, it's actually pretty difficult to make any turns at all due to the extensive external bandaging. Let's dive right into the solve. Let's solve this extra split 3x3x2. Like I explained earlier, my general plan is to first get it back to the cuboid shape, then reduce it to a 3x3x2, and then just solve it as a 3x3x2. Right off the bat, I'm noticing that using algorithms anytime soon is out of the question. The puzzle is so heavily bandaged that I'm actively having to hunt for moves that are possible. Right now I'm going to try and get at least a single 2x3 face in the correct shape. I think this top face pattern looks pretty cool. I don't believe I've ever seen it before. Anyway, I wanted to show you the ridiculous bandaging that I'm dealing with. Almost every 2x3 face is blocked right now, either because a triangular piece is in the adjacent layer, or due to where the outer corners are positioned. I honestly have no idea what I'm doing in this step of solving the shape, but I'm having a lot of fun right now. I've never had any other puzzle that's like this, and I'm really enjoying figuring this one out. I'll check back in after making some more progress. And after making just a few more turns, the shape of a single 3x2 face has been restored. I can't actually turn the face because there's an outer corner blocking it, but this is still progress. The goal now is to restore the rest of the shape just enough to where I can actually perform cheese algorithms, and that'll completely wrap up the cuboid shape step. The 2x3 layer whose shape is solved can finally turn, and the only thing that's blocking the opposite 2x3 layer from turning is the red and white triangular piece that sits perpendicular to it. Finally, both the top and bottom 2x3 layers are free to turn. The hard part is over. I can now solve the shape as a 2-layer cheese. Now that the shape is done, I'm going to reduce this to a 3x3x2 by pairing the smaller triangular pieces to the larger ones. I'll be using the basic square one algorithm for this. Finally, I only have two small triangles I need to swap, a blue one and a red one. To make sure nothing else gets screwed up, I'll put two complete edges of the same color on the opposite layer. Now all I need to do is the square one algorithm, and this will be fully reduced to a 3x3x2. Although technically you can also call it a cheese algorithm. What came first, the two-layer cheese or the square one? Okay, it looks like the square one was released in 1990, while the first two-layer cheese was made in 2002 but wasn't mass-produced until 2010. Although there was a one-layer cheese produced by Rubik's in 1980. The Rubik's UFO, which is also a two-layer cheese, was released in 2001. So it looks like my initial thought of calling this square one algorithm was correct, since the square one predates the cheeses by more than a decade. Anyway, the extra split 3x3x2 is now fully reduced to a 3x3x2, so I'll go ahead and solve it as one. Did you notice that the part faces on the 3x2 sides aren't perfect squares? It kind of looks like the puzzle's a little bit squished. That's because Greg essentially had the choice of keeping the top layer faces square or the side layer faces square, but he couldn't get both. I agree with his decision to make the top and bottom look normal. I think this is the more aesthetically pleasing version. And finally, the extra split 3x3x2 is solved. That was really fun. I really enjoyed solving it, especially the very first step of navigating the crazy external bandaging. Past that, it was a nice and relaxing cheese and 3x3x2 solve. I think I've come full circle because in the past I've used 3x3x2 algorithms on square one variations, and now I got to use a square one algorithm on a 3x3x2 mod. Thank you, Greg, for making this puzzle, and thank you all for watching, especially those still here at the end of the video. See you next time.